Hey, welcome to 6 Degrees North Country Living. I'm your host, Greg O'Connor, and just like to say thank you for tuning in the last couple shows. It's been crazy around here, but then again, winter months always are. So thanks for tuning in. We're going to talk here a little bit today about the maple syrup season coming up. 6 Degrees North Country Living. Love you. All right, welcome back to 6 Degrees North Country Living. As promised, we're going to talk about maple surple today. I've got Tony the guide on hand to really get you going and get you started. How you doing today, Tony?
Hey, pretty good, guys. How is everybody there in podcast land?
We're doing good. We had a little hot dog and marshmallow roast here last week, and everybody's doing fine. Yeah, we're loving it out here.
That's great. Hey, I got looking out the window of the studio here in downtown Oak Hill, Greg. I see snow piles out there the size of late 70s Buicks. Can you explain what's going on there? You guys get some snow in the last couple days or what?
We did. We got about 8 inches there on Sunday night, I believe it was. And then the following day, we dropped down into the 50s. Amazing enough, I would like to thank We Energies for letting their power go out at 50 below zero for 6 hours. The snow's piled up, the cleaning crews are great. Of course, there's no place to go with the snow, so it just piles up in front of the houses. So, it's been eventful.
That explains it. All right, back to the script here, I guess. Yeah, so we are here today to talk about a little bit of maple syrup, and it's first couple days of February here. And if you are planning to get started on your maple syrup, now is the time you should be underway with that process.
So I should be starting to tap already, or just
getting
the permission?
Close. I mean, kind of getting close, and I guess we'll kind of work our way into that here a little bit. But I personally come from about 10 years being a quote-unquote backyarder, as they call it, kind of making maple syrup on my own.
That's better than being a backdoorer, I'm sure.
Well, it might be one and the same. My first experience actually around maple syrup was when I was, maybe 10 or 12 years old. Kearney, Michigan. We have some family friends up there that actually owned a commercial operation named Jasper Sugar Bush, but very, very good family friends, do some deer hunting in that area. And my dad's in partnership in a cabin up there, and we would go up there as young tykes and tool around on the tractor. And
well, that's interesting because you you broke my oldest son in 3 years ago, right?
In very much the same way, yeah.
I mean, so tell him what you had my boy do.
Well, basically physical labor, to put it in a nutshell.
No, that was a lot of fun. Keep us informed here.
So. Yeah, but I guess I consider myself a backyarder. I think generally in our craft, I think there's 3 categories of producers and consumers. One of those being the backyarder. One of those would be your typical commercial-sized operation, who's the one supplying it to all of your general stores that you can go buy off the shelf. And then that would bring me to my third category, which is those folks that consider them maple syrup producers as they're walking down the aisles of Walmart that just grab it off the shelf. So.
Right. We're going to pull one right off here, and we're making maple syrup.
We're going to kind of focus the main part of this podcast, I guess, on the backyarder, which would be, folks just like you listening to our production right now. It's just, whether it's just yourself or people of your community, families, friends, whatever it may be. So
someone like me, like last year I did, my end product was 5 quarts. I'm a backyarder, right?
That's a backyarder.
Yeah. All right. That's just enough to get me for a month.
Just enough to be dangerous, right? There's a lot of pride in being the backyarder. A lot of pride in your own setup. It can bring the community together. It's a great way to spend time in the outdoors during spring. Basically, I don't want to scare nobody away by this next comment, but in my own experience, when I would build my own setup and, bring all of my own stuff to the table, I would generally figure to budget about $1,000. But
pretty expensive maple syrup there.
Well, it can be, right. But it's I also wanted to go big. I wanted to go big and have the right stuff. I always bought a really nice stainless pan just to make sure my end product was what I wanted. So that was what I gave to it. Many folks out there do it for free. Just gather stuff from around the yard and go to town boiling.
Sure.
So,
I mean, if you can get into it for however much you want to.
absolutely, you could.
I mean, because I found a bunch of old fire brick, and I built a little kiln-looking thing, and then I did use a stainless pot I have, but yeah, I mean, I got going for $50.
Yeah,
you know?
Stainless is the key. That's where you want to be in your main evaporator. You want to stay away from things that are galvanized, aluminum, rusted. You want to stay away from that.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. That's a good point. Keep that equipment clean.
Keep it clean, yep, and keep it nice. I mean, you're going to invest one time, and you can keep that equipment for years to come.
Sure. Have your kids doing it later on down
there. You go.
Which I think is the ultimate goal, right? To get our kids doing it so we can enjoy it.
Pass along that tradition. Absolutely.
Pass out on next to the tradition.
Again, we're just keeping it quick here, not going into too much detail. Just trying to maybe spar that interest in the folks of you out there that are hearing this that have thought about it and just haven't done it yet. We're going to keep it simple. Really talk about the three main steps, which would be your sap collection, your boiling, your actual evaporation process, and then of course filtering and bottling your finished product. So to get started on collection, as goofy as this sounds, really make sure you're drilling holes into maple trees. I did sell one of my evaporators one year to a guy. He bought it just as the season was starting from my evaporator I had the previous year.
Sure.
He called me about a week into it, checked in on how I was doing, and he said he hadn't gotten a drip of sap yet. I took a ride over there, had a cup of coffee with him, took me to show me his operation. He had an elm tree, a bitter hickory, and 2 ash trees tapped. So,
then now they will give you sap, right?
Well, it's, no.
No. Okay.
No.
No sap.
Just make sure you're tapping into your maple trees. You know, everyone. It doesn't have to be your hard maples, which is your sugar maple. You can tap reds, you can tap blacks, you can tap silvers. Everyone has their own little idea of
the perfect tree.
Right?
Sure.
And honestly, I've tapped every single one of them. I've never had any complaints about my syrup.
Good deal. So what about box elder? Now I've heard box elder can be tapped. But
You can tap that. I mean, I think you're probably getting more into the realm of 45 gallons to a gallon of syrup in box elders, and it might not have the cleanest flavor just by itself. But if you wanted to use your syrup, something along the lines of like a glaze or something like that over some turkey or a ham, that would probably be okay to use there. But maybe not on your waffles and pancakes.
Okay. All right.
Give that to the in-laws,
Yeah, go. There's your bottle.
And sticking with that same subject of tapping trees, absolutely make sure you're getting permission if you're out there on lands that you don't own. Make sure you're getting permission from landowners and have a willingness to share your products in the end.
Oh, sure. You always got to kick back a little bit, to the landowners. I mean, there's almost all the property in the world is owned by somebody, so you just can't walk out there and start tapping somebody's trees,
Yep. And be specific. If it's land that you don't own, be specific and clear on what your intent is with their trees. Just to make sure that no one's we don't want to be making no one upset out there.
Sure. 100%.
So that's your main collection. You got to get out there and you got to get the sap. That's the sap is what we need for this next stage of the process here, which is boiling. And the boiling, I'm going to kind of go into a little bit of evaporator design. You don't necessarily want to do this in a turkey fryer because you have a lot of depth. Your main goal is to boil off as much water vapor out of that sap as you possibly can, and that's going to come from having a good large surface area.
And I would think that also would help as far as, because either you build a wood fire underneath it or you're using propane, and one way or the other that's energy costs that you want to get the most bang for your buck, so to speak, right?
That's correct. Bang for your buck and time. I mean, it's going to take you twice as long on something that has, say 1 square foot of surface area as it would if you had 2. So the more surface area you can get to boil, the quicker this process is going to take. And this is the process that is extremely high on the time you spend doing it.
You think a fellow would be okay with like those steamers that you see when you go to the fancy restaurants? Or
For sure, yeah.
That's about probably what you're looking at, right?
I built a few with that design.
Okay,
So.
good deal. Steamers, and those are cheap. You can get them for $5 down at the Goodwill store, right?
Absolutely. And you did touch on the next part of this process here, which is the fuel. What are you going to use to heat all that sap up to get it boiling? And I mean, basically, you're going to have wood, and wood is probably what most people go with. I have built a few evaporators that were gas fired. Actually produces a little bit cleaner finished product. I do like to stay with the wood, so. Make sure you're gonna, be prepared for your wood supply. You're gonna need a significant amount of firewood to get things rolling and keep yourself boiling.
Now here's a trick question.
Hit me with it.
How many cord per 50 gallons of sap? I mean, just to kind of give guys a ratio of what you're looking at. I mean, you think a cord would do 50 gallon?
50 gallons of sap?
Yeah, of sap.
Oh, easily. Yeah.
Easily. Okay.
Yeah, easily.
So a backyarder, if you got a cord of wood laying around, you can get something going on.
Yeah, and I mean honestly, we are getting close to that time of year when you're probably have less than a month to go of using that wood burner. So you're probably just burning up what's left of your yearly supply if you went heavy.
Sure, that's a good way to look at it. I'll just clean up the mess and boil up some sap at the same time.
Yep, and then just to talk about if you want to get something that's gas fired, you can use obviously LP. Is fine. Natural gas is fine. This would, something that's a little bit more advanced in fabrication and things like that. Obviously, we wouldn't want to steer nobody into, trying to make something out of gas and have something go wrong. So try to tap into your neighbor's natural gas or propane source. I kind of recommend that. Keeps it a little cheaper on your end. Generally speaking, you're going to need about 40 gallons of sap to produce 1 gallon of maple syrup. So I mean, you're having to boil off, approximately 39 gallons of water in that tree sap to get to your finished product. I personally choose to collect my sap in 5-gallon pails. Makes it kind of nice and easy because I can expect out of that 5 gallons, I'm going to basically get 1 quart of finished syrup. Have a good idea when you get started on how much syrup you expect to get in the end.
What if I want 50 gallons? Well, how much syrup am I going to need to get through a year?
How much syrup? Well, I guess that depends on how many pancakes you want to cook.
Right. How good the crop was this year.
Well, now when we have fire burning, we have sap boiling, and smoke is going, and the smell is great, and all the neighbors from town and even from towns away have come to see what you have going on in your backyard.
That's that's the one thing about living in Oak Hill that I love. It's 21st century. You don't think about people driving down a main thoroughfare and just stopping for no reason to see what the locals are up to, quote unquote, and we get it all the time. I mean,
yeah. Oh yeah.
It's great. I mean, it is a fun publicity. People are always curious about that kind of stuff.
It's great. I always love inviting people out to see what we got going on in the operation. So.
And you guys run a nice operation. I mean, I've had nothing but fun up there, and it's everybody's got a job, and it's a community orientated thing,
For the record, Greg had fun and a few cocktails.
Well, of course, that's to be taken for granted. I can walk home, so no drinking and driving in Oak Hill.
Yeah.
And just take the roll downhill.
We're gonna fast forward a couple. Kind of fast forward that whole boiling process. That's where most of your time is going to be spent, is in boiling off that water content. So as you're finishing your boil, you need to pay close attention to the bubbles that your evaporator pan of sap is producing. You're going to get close to that stage when you're going to notice a foam to the top, and you're going to be at that point, boom, you are very close to maple syrup, and you are going to need to shut down your fire. Some people like to use different methods. I personally like to watch for my bubbles. That tells me everything I need to know. Some folks will continuously monitor a temperature. And once you're approaching that 219.2 degrees Fahrenheit, again, you're 99% of the way to your finished product.
Now, do you remember the year I was up there, what I came up with for the finishing part of it? Remember when we were outside, because we're doing this outside, outdoors, and I said something along the lines, when you can see the maple trees in reflecting off your sap, then it was about ready to go. Isn't that right? Well, look for maple trees when you're boiling your sap.
So temperature is one another way. A third way is your simple density gauges. Those are easily enough to buy off of the internet. And then if you are that guy out there that's the backyard enthusiast that holds maybe a double major in science, you can buy yourself a refractometer, which will give you to the T where your maple syrup is at in its journey to becoming maple syrup. So.
A refractometer.
A refractometer. Yeah.
There we go.
That's
okay.
what I said.
Well, yeah.
So at this point, you are 99% of the way to your finished product. I personally choose to. It's really tough to take your bulk evaporator pan and actually get your finished product out of that. I do personally choose to kind of finish it off a remote source, and I would say this is maybe where your turkey fryer comes into play. I've done that many times, and it works great, and you can kind of still keep things outdoors and not really get all that humidity built up in your home. So
Yeah. I did that one year, and
yeah.
the kitchen's still sticky from all of that, okay? Yeah. Do not boil inside your home, ladies and gentlemen, okay? I thought I was going to surprise Tony the guide with my own maple syrup one year, and I surprised my wife with the sticky floors and sticky cabinets, and so don't boil inside your home.
But I still love the taste of licking your walls and ceiling in there. Right?
What do they? The snozberries taste like snozberries. I mean, this is crazy. It definitely will. It definitely will.
Yeah, so finishing our boil here is kind of going to lead into our bottling process. The absolute number one thing that needs to be considered here is filter. Nothing is more embarrassing than passing off some cloudy, not finely filtered maple syrup to your friends and community. So,
now, will a bad bottle make you go blind, Tony?
Well, I mean, if you're in it for the pride of it, you're gonna want to filter,
Okay,
or get colored bottles.
Oh, there you go. That's another trick. Yeah.
But no, you really got to wrap your mind around filtering, especially at the final process, at the point that you're putting this into your jars or your cans or whatever it might be. General, specs on some filters. From what I recall, industry standard calls for 5 microns. Again, those of you with your double major in science,
like us.
Yeah, exactly like us, Greg. Yeah, but that's where you want to be at. Really, my preference is multiple layers of cheesecloth. That is really gonna get you what you need to be good. Every jar I bottle, I usually take a break, rinse out the cheesecloth under nice hot running water. So each bottle is kind of is not. Just
start fresh again with each bar.
Right, start fresh.
Now I noticed when I was, and I think I may have evaporated too long, I noticed it was hard to get my syrup to actually filter through. Is that normal, or is that kind of...
Yeah, you're going to want, at the point that you feel you have finished maple syrup, you will now want to dial that heat back so you're keeping that batch at about 200 degrees. You don't want to let it cool and then attempt to filter and bottle it.
Wow, don't let it cool down.
Maybe that's what you were running into.
100%.
Yeah.
I brought it in here and started pouring it through coffee filters.
Yep. So I try to I try to finish maybe about anywhere from 2 to 3 gallons of finished maple syrup at a time, and I'll bottle that. Okay. And the whole time it's sustaining a heat, sustaining on top of its heat source, just to keep that at temperature. Generally speaking, 20 or so gallons of finished maple syrup would really take me close to about a good 6 to 8 hours to really get finished, filtered, bottled, sealed, stamped, labeled, all that fun stuff. So maybe something to throw out there for the folks of you listening today is, at the point that you are finishing and bottling your maple syrup. I mean, you know me, Greg. I'm all about my add-ins, and
I do. I have a bottle of.
I do strongly feel I am the guy who pioneered Fireball maple syrup. Maybe not whiskey maple syrup, but definitely the Fireball. I have heard from so many people that they've never heard of that, but you know what? Everyone has loved it.
I love the Fireball maple surple.
Yeah.
You only get it in Oak Hill, Wisconsin.
Yeah, that's right. I would recommend strict adherence to federal alcohol consumption statutes for those of you that want to take that route.
Right.
we don't want to have any kickback.
Well, bootlegging still is illegal in this state. I do know that.
That's not to say some of us don't do that.
No,
but
not on this show.
Yeah, no, your Fireball maple syrup will pair very well with waffles and ice cream. It will not pair all that well with uneven walking terrain or power tools.
Okay.
So I want to get that out.
That's kind of like the precaution on your power tool there. Don't use
right.
in the rain, that kind of thing.
But in the end, involve the community. Grab some youthful members of your community. Get them involved.
Sure, our future is our kids.
Yeah, and it's something that, you don't even have to be stoking the fire or filtering or collecting sap. You can just come and stand around the fire and just chit-chat and explain a little bit about your operation. Everyone seems to love that. So, have fun doing it. Share the wealth. Don't be greedy about the stuff you produce. Put a bow on top, a third of what you've done and produce, so you can get that out there to friends, neighbors, the random passerby, or things like that. 6 Degrees North actually provides free sampling of your products, folks. So anything you make out there, please feel free to get Greg's address and send some in for sampling. We'd be happy to take a taste.
Very good, very good. I'd like to say thank you for listening to 6 Degrees North Country Living today with your guest host, Tony the Guide, and happy maple surpling out there, everybody. Love you. Bye.